Welcome. You're watching the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Vodafone India's business may just be heading for liquidation if the government does not come up with sops that the company has asked for. Vodafone Idea appears to be the most vulnerable of the three major private telecom players after a Supreme Court order almost 3 weeks ago rejected a plea by telecom players which would mean they pay license and spectrum fees to the tune of 92,000 crore rupees. Since then, Vodafone Idea and Bharti Airtel have been urging the government to give them some relief by way of easier payment schedules and a waiver of some fees. The biggest player currently, Reliance Jio, on its part has been vocal in asking the government not to help out these incumbents. Meanwhile, Vodafone is so sure that there's no point in its India business that they have reduced the valuation of the India business to zero. So will we see one more foreign player exit India Telecom? Remember, there have been several over the last 2 decades. And is it government policy that makes it impossible for these players to thrive and survive? Should Vodafone be given the sops they're asking for? Speaking to us on the deepening telecom crisis now, we're talking with Mahesh Uppal, telecom analyst, A. Ramachandran, senior partner at EMA Partner, and Dr. Ashwini Mahajan, national co-convener of the Swadeshi Jagran Manch. Welcome to all of you. I'm also speaking with Mr. S.S. Sirohi, former member of the Telecom Commission. Thank you for joining us today. Mr. Ramachandran, let me come to you first. And of course, the trigger for this fresh conversation, we've been on top of the story here on the India Development Debate, but we're revisiting it today because the Vodafone CEO, in essentially an earnings communication, has talked about how the India business makes no sense for him. He seems pretty ready to disconnect. Is it more of sort of a warning, or are they really in that much pain?
This conversation sounds like a deja vu to me, Tamanna. I think we had a similar conversation a week back or less than a week back. So as we spoke last time around, lot of multinational companies who have tried to play this telecom game in this country, have fallen by the wayside. Right? We spoke of a lot of these companies, starting from AT&T right up to Etisalat and Sham to Systema Telecom. So with this in play, what Vodafone is talking of, obviously, the threat is real is what I would feel in terms of, what they are saying. They have valued India business to zero, which at one point of time was valued at $2.2 billion in their balance sheet. So from there to this, it's a big fall. What Vodafone wants to do when it comes to is it a mere threat? Only time will tell. But it has definitely, they clearly say that, they don't see any value in in continuing with the India business. And they are very clear that, they are not going to invest anything more in the India business. So that is very clear.
Mr. Sirohi, we talk about ease of doing business. You know how the telecom sector has, gone from some 12, 15 players now to 3, and possibly we'll see just 2. Is it government policy at play, and what do you make about the Vodafone CEO's statements?
India's telecom story is a highly successful story so far. In the last decades, when we see India's telecom market has grown into a very vibrant and dynamic market. It has a huge value and very high business potential even now. The only thing that those operators like Vodafone, who have really profited from their operations so far in the last 2 decades, are now started blackmailing the government or to give out some sops for them, which is totally undeserved sops. Government is not supposed to give any private operators any kind of sops to bail them out because of their mismanagement or financial mismanagement or some business strategy decision which they have gone wrong. Even I would say that their decision to merge Vodafone Idea may have a big reason for their fall now. So it's up to them. And secondly, it's the multinational corporations. if everybody knows the telecom market is telecom business is highly capital intensive, and it also has a huge potential, and it is also cyclic. So in terms of at various stages of its life cycle, there's so competition comes, stabilizes. These things keep happening. So it's a cyclic business.
No,
Sometimes
but
it happens
if
over
it's a cycle,
3 to 4 years.
yes, Mr. Sirohi, if there's a cycle,
competitive
there has to
scene.
be an up and a down.
So they are fully capable of
This is a
capable of
constant
servicing it.
decimation of value. In a cycle, there has to be an up and a down. It has to move both ways. This is a constant decimation of value.
It is because of their own actions. If they are saying so, they have over 30 crores customers in India. They are the market leaders for the last three big market leaders, almost having the same share of customer base, same share of revenue base. The only thing is they have to bring in money for this difficult time at the moment.
That they're clear
and
they
pump
won't.
in money if they
They're
have
clear they won't.
believe in the potential
They're
of
clear,
India.
They're clear they
So-
won't. Okay, let me get Mahesh Uppal's view in. Vodafone is clear they're not going to bring
they
in.
are blackmailing it. They are blackmailing somebody. Okay, fine. Somebody else will come. Somebody else will buy them out. It's a huge potential. I think government should not bother about it. They should.
Very strong words there. Mr. Sirohi is saying it's blackmail.
And they are not supposed to bail out the private companies.
Yeah, very strong words there. Mr. Sirohi is saying it's complete blackmail. Mr. Uppal, I want you to come in on your perspective. You've tracked this sector over the last 2.5 decades. We've now come down to 3 players. Vodafone is already cut its losses on its balance sheet. There's nothing really holding them back. Mr. Sirohi says this is blackmail.
I do. Yeah. No, I would respectfully disagree with that. I do not think that Vodafone is blackmailing the government or, for that matter, anybody else. I think the crisis in the telecom sector is real and quite intense, and I think we need to address it head on. We cannot afford a situation where a company, as Mr. Sirohi put it, one of the largest companies in the business, one of the most important players internationally, is complaining that it cannot run a business in India. And I think this is something that really we ignore this kind of feedback at our own peril. We cannot afford a situation where we have so few players. There was a time where when we had too many, and I was one of those people who constantly argued that that was too many. But I think now we are facing an entirely different kind of risk. And I think the whether or not the company has mismanaged its business is an entirely different point. And I hold that's not something that we can discuss here. But I think what we can certainly accept is that this whole transformation in the fortunes of this sector has happened only in the last 2-3 years. And I think the government, as well as the regulators, they have a job, I believe, to make sure that the sector remains attractive to investment. And I think this is something that we have clearly not done.
Right.
We have not clearly focused on that. Now, I don't hold any brief for somebody who may have defaulted on their fees or their revenue shares, etc. But I think there is something fundamentally wrong with our licensing regime, which is causing these problems, and we can discuss them if you have time.
Yes, so no, we'll absolutely come to it because we need to go into this in depth, and I think that's you've struck an important note. It's not about one company, but what it really tells us. Ashwini Mahajan, yes, please come in.
You see, I agree with the gentleman who was saying that this is a kind of a blackmailing. This is the same Vodafone I would like to remind you, which has used the tax haven route for investment, and everybody was talking on the top of the word that we have changed the law retrospectively and this and that. They owed 20,000 crores of rupees which they didn't owe, they didn't pay. So you see, we have to respect the law of the land, and under this law of the land, if and these companies have to operate. You see, the problem with the all the sectors, I am not talking only of the telecom sector, problems with all the sectors is that the multinational companies which they come here, they think that they can always get the laws changed, they can make the government come to the toes and come to the and can bow behind bow before them. This is actually the problem. You see, they have to follow the law of the land.
Okay.
And
but
this issue
Mahajan,
is not a new issue.
That the law
Ultimately,
of the land
the
keeps
decision
changing?
has come.
Yeah, the problem isn't the problem that the law of the land keeps changing. If
Where
the law
where
of the land is the same and it's
Tamanna,
consistent, then you know how to do business.
This is not a change. This is no change. No, this is no change. AGR issue is an old issue. Ultimately, the decision has come against them, and now they are saying that the business environment is not in their favor. You see, I fail to agree with this, because ultimately you have to pay your dues. And if Supreme Court has given the order to clear the dues, now they are saying that we will leave India. You see, we have to, as Swadeshi Jagamaj, I would say that either these multinational companies should follow the rules, or if they think that they can always leave. So you see, every time they can give this kind of warning, okay, we will go away, we will do
okay,
that.
Mr. Ramachandra, I want you to respond to that. I want you to respond to the very basic premise.
We'll talk about
okay,
FDI
I got
not
your point,
coming
Mr. Mahajan, I got your point. I want you to respond to the very basic premise that there is a law of the land, and you can't hope that it's tweaked to favor you. That's the basic argument that Mr. Mahajan and Mr. Sirohi seem to be making.
My only question here, Tamanna, is this industry vibrant today? What is the answer to that? The answer is clearly no. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that there is a proper playing field for all the players here? Right? There is a regulator, there is a government entity. Right? No, these are all people who are responsible for ensuring that all players get their due. That is the only point here.
Okay. The industry.
So in my view, whether Vodafone leaves the country, please.
No, but finish
Please
your
carry on.
point. Finish your point. Finish your point, Rama.
So in my view, Tamanna, I think if the government let's go back in history a bit. When the telecom liberalization happened, it was duopoly by design. Every circle was allotted 2 players, right? Today, we have come to a situation for the whole country. Today, it's duopoly by, I don't know by what. So finally, will we be left with only 2 players? And as a country, will we be happy with that? Now, let's also understand that, today telecom is beyond what it is being used for today. Right, telecom is going to be the enabler for all new age industries. Bandwidth has become a big commodity.
But the way I see it, there's a very fundamental question here. There is a very fundamental question here. Should the government be prioritizing keeping the sector competitive, even if it means hand-holding for some players at some point, or should they stick by the rule in letter and spirit, and if some perish along the way, so be it? That's, I think, the fundamental question this all distills down to, amid various reports, some saying that there will be some relief from the government, some saying that, they will have to pay within the 3-month deadline that the Supreme Court has put in place. Before we move ahead, I just want to, go across to my colleague, Sunita Nagpal, who tracks this sector very carefully. And I think it's important to put this into perspective on how many foreign players have entered and then had to exit the Indian telecom market over the last 2 odd decades. Sunita.
Experience for foreign telecom companies in India has not been very great, starting from AT&T, which had to exit in 2004. Then came Hutchison, who had to exit because they were facing some cash crunch in their own country. So they sold the stake in Hutchison SR to Vodafone and exited. But post that, it was really a downhill for foreign investments in telecom companies. Remember, in 2012, Supreme Court had cancelled 122 licenses, and out of that, many of these companies had tied up with foreign companies. So you saw Maxis, Elitstar, Bahrain Telecom, they all exited post their license were cancelled. Although Systema and Telenor stayed invested, they decided to bid for spectrum again, but they also packed up very soon, hanged their boots, wrote off their investments in India. So it was not a great experience for them. Only two foreign companies are continuing to stay invested, which is Singtel and Vodafone right now. Singtel has investments in Bharti Airtel, while Vodafone Idea has a joint venture with Birla. But they are all facing problems because there has been a lot of demand made on the regulatory front from government. So these companies will have to shell out a substantial amount of money. Not only that, telecom is one sector where you need to keep investing every 2 years because the technology keeps changing. You move from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G. So in order to invest in these kind of technologies, you need to keep investing as an industry 70,000 crore every 2 years. That's the kind of investment is required, and for that we need foreign funds. So we need to make it much easier for foreign companies to survive in telecom sector.
All right. Big questions there for major players from Telenor to Etisalat. They've all come and gone. The question is that is it because they wanted the rules tweaked, or were the rules one way or the other, the circumstances changing in a way that they could not survive? What's happening in the telecom sector, and does the government need to step in? Let's come back with that basic question. And Mahesh Uppal, let me get you to address it. Vodafone is one company, but literally it's the last one standing in terms of foreign players in the Indian market, when there used to be so many at one point.
Absolutely. In fact, let me first address the point that Mr. Mahajan makes about foreign players. I think we must distinguish between foreign investment in our infrastructure and foreign investment, for example, through FIIs, etc. This is a company, in this case, and I'm not specific about Vodafone, but foreign investment in our telecom infrastructure is something that we should rejoice about, because this is money invested in our infrastructure which no company can take away, like an FII can simply move money out. So this is something which is, our sector is extremely capital intensive, and we must welcome, as I mentioned in my previous intervention, we must welcome investment in a core infrastructure of the kind that we are talking about. It's also true, as Mr. Ramchandran mentioned, this is a sector where which has implications for virtually the whole of our economy. Now, we have to recognize that whatever happens, we cannot afford an uncompetitive telecom sector. Yeah. We cannot afford a sector in which investors are reluctant to invest. Irrespective of the other details, we have to make sure that our sector is in fact, regulators internationally are very, very focused to ensuring that the sectors remain attractive to investment.
Right.
And I don't think it is anybody's case, and I don't think that is even a fact, that Vodafone has broken any law. I think what is being talked about here is somehow that, all that Vodafone seems to be saying, irrespective of whether we believe it or not, is that, look, it's not working for us, and we are reviewing our position. Now, how that, especially since we are talking about how business works, how is that anything other than trying to run your business to the best of your interests? Somebody finds their business unviable or unattractive, they want to close it down. Now, whether their closure is something we should be worried about as people who want that infrastructure, that capacity, that coverage to continue is the point. And I think the answer to whether we should do something about it is an overwhelming yes. We must do something so that the sector remains attractive to investors.
So just to put into context, while we're having this conversation, just to bring focus to the ET Now exclusive that the Department of Telecom has written to all the players, asking them to cough up the money and make their payments within the 3 months that the Supreme Court has stipulated. They had asked for relief and for an extension of up to 6 months. We have information that has been denied as of now. They want the money within 3 months. what happens next? And how does that really, help the industry and the sector? Mr. Mahajan, I just want you to respond very quickly because Mr. Uppal was responding to your points. Coming back very quickly to, isn't it the government's job to ensure that an industry is flourishing? And just because Vodafone is a foreign player, there shouldn't be a differential treatment, to help them or against them. It has to be a level playing field. So forget for a second that they're a foreign player. Do we really want a market with just two players, say one Jio and one BSNL? What kind of a market do we want? Do we want a competitive market from the consumer's point of view?
Let me tell you that we are not against the infrastructure investment by MNCs. They have done it. We welcome that, and we have been giving all sorts of ecosystem for that. It is not that. The question is that there is a law of the land, and nobody is talking only of Vodafone. There are other players also, those who have been asked to pay, but it's not just Vodafone which has been asked to pay. Therefore, there is no differential treatment with the Vodafone. Secondly, this is not a new thing that you are talking only of MNCs going away. We have seen many Indian players losing their value in the whole process, and nobody even seemed to have bothered about it. You see, the Tata has lost money, and many other players. It is not just the MNCs who have exited, even Indian players have exited, and they were also investing in the infrastructure, and therefore we are not
I think the
distinguishing.
problem seems to be about them being an MNC, which is why I'm saying let's relook at it without the MNC factor. It's about competition in the Indian market.
No.
Exactly.
What I have
we are
said,
speaking about the industry.
You see, the question which I've raised. The question which I raised was that the same Vodafone really declined to pay any tax when they acquired SR, and that was the case in point where when the government had to bring in a new law with retrospective effect, which was opposed to, and ultimately Vodafone has been the gainer. What I am trying to say is that nobody is against the people coming from outside investing in infrastructure. What I am saying is that there is a law of the land, and this law of the land applies to everybody. It is Airtel also, and anybody who is operating in the telecom sector is supposed to pay the dues. So if the law of the land operates and Supreme Court gives verdicts,
then let people respond. Let's keep the conversation moving. Yes, Mr. Ramachandran.
So, Tamanna, see, the point it is not whether it is an MNC or it's a non-MNC. We are talking about an industry here, right? That is the point, right? We are talking about telecom as an industry, whether it is an Indian player or whether it is a multinational player. My biggest worry is, 5G spectrum auctions are around the corner, right? So who are the players who has the money to buy the spectrum is what I am worrying. And if 5G does not come into India the way it has to come, then it will have an impact on other industries which are building their businesses around 5G as a concept, right? And if the government in its best of its wisdom believes that two players are enough to service this market, then I rest my argument.
Okay, Mr. Sirohi, the basic argument comes down to policy, and that is the same for any player, whether they're flourishing or whether they're not. The fact of the matter is more players have fallen by the wayside rather than flourish. Very few have managed to even stay the course. Even those with deep pockets have not managed to stay the course. At the end of the day, is it a bit like killing the goose that lays the golden eggs? There have been a huge, a source of revenue for the government, but beyond a point, you have to let them do business. No one is going to come here and put money if they don't know what the rules could be tomorrow, and if there's no way of turning a profit.
Please note, government is not obstructing any business. Be clear about it. Government's intention is to promote business and prosperity for everybody. So if somebody is going to blame government for this mess, it's wrong. First and secondly, if you see the number of players in the telecom market, there used to be 2 players initially in the 2000, then they became 4. The growth was taking place. Then after 2008, they became 14. There was cutthroat competition. Some newcomers who were not having enough money could not sustain later. They had to fall out. After 2012 judgment of Supreme Court, then there was complete clear field. So what was left with was Airtel, Vodafone, Idea, Arcom, and BSNL, MTNL. They were left, and the tariff started rising. Where was the question of competition? There were 5-6 players, but still the tariff was rising from 2012 to 2016. How come they were rising? And the gross revenue increased from 1,44,000 crores to 2,24,000
So let me flip the argument then. Let me
2018-19.
Yeah.
So there was a sustained increase. Please listen to it.
Yes.
Let me complete the whole thing.
Yes.
So it means that it is irrelevant in the telecom market how many players are there. They were still making the kind of competition we talk about. It was not that much. Only with this increased the competition was there because of the entry of a new operator with the pan-India presence and with a lot of investment done in the new technology. So please note, it's the new technology which created the difference. And also the pan-India presence, which really created a difference, and it gave huge dividends to the Indian consumers as well as the revenue to government. So,
yeah.
And if you see
Okay,
what is the government policy, holistic policy about telecom sector is to give broadband for all, right?
Yeah.
And broadband of 50 MB speed. How will you achieve it? Digital infrastructure, if you have to create, you have to invest heavily. Who will invest? If you talk about it, there's a lot of competition now. It means you are not going to invest. So it is better who don't want to invest in new technology in India, let them go.
No,
Those
but who would want to invest if they don't have the chances of turning up? Okay, let me flip the question to Ramachandran. Let me flip the question. The pain seems to have really started after one player has entered and caused a disruption, which happens in several sectors time and again. Is it a lack of ability to stand up to the competition which has led to this situation? And if it is so, then it's not really the government's problem to bail out those who can't compete. Perform or perish. That's the rule of the open free market, isn't it?
Absolutely.
See, I'll tell you what, it's a very interesting point in many ways. The question here is, what the government policies has been. It's not only about the government policies, the regulatory aspects surrounding this particular industry, right, has not necessarily developed enough competition in the last 3 to 4 years. That is what has happened, right? And today we are left with 2 players, whether we like it or not. Now, again, I'll go back to my fundamental statement. How is this industry viewed today? Whether from a talent perspective, whether from a market perspective, or even from their organization's balance sheet perspective. How is this business viewed today? Everybody knows the answer. So what should anyone do? Should government step in? My take is government should have a view in this and look at this considerably. That is my take on this.
Okay, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. As of now, the big information that we have is that the government does not want to extend that 3-month deadline that the Supreme Court has said. Yes, Mr. Sirori, since you put your hand up, I'm going to let you have the closing comment. Should the government help or not is the question. Your view so far has been if Vodafone wants to go, let them go.
Well, see, this is a free market economy.
Yeah.
And secondly, the digital economy which we want to build, digital infrastructure which we want to build, is highly capital intensive. Who will bring that much of capital? Only those with deep pockets and who can sustain competition. Those who don't want to, let them go. Let somebody else come.
But on that note, we'll have to wait and see if there is any relief for these players. As of now, the 3-month deadline remains. There seems to be no extension. That's the news that we're reporting right here on ET Now. Will this speed up Vodafone's quote-unquote warning that it could exit the market? We'll have to wait and see. Would there be other relief mechanisms coming in? Perhaps those are on the anvil as well. But in the meantime, the telecom sector is going through a very vulnerable phase right now. We'll have to see who survives this fight. We'll take a very short break. When we come back, on the other side of the India development debate, I'm speaking with a very, very interesting person, Mr. Ratin Roy, top economist, former member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, speaks on what exactly is hurting the Indian economy. Don't miss that conversation.